us off, thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Rachel Carshunk. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for StrongHearts Native Helpline, and I'm so happy that you took the time out of your day to join today. And then when we do have this available on YouTube, if you're taking the time out of your day in the future to watch on there, thank you. So, all right, Serena, I'll hand it over to you.
Ay, tara nothing na fui, kojo dabi, she serida ki kolandeo gonse, hinako del, donida, nikai iritsai gonse, Chirikawa Apache, Ishli, Chicago Yukonchli, Asho Akina Frikultsakai Shiditsai Diji. Hello everyone, my name is Serena. Windy City is what they call me. My spirit name is She Who Hears the Old Ones of Chiricahua Apache from the San Carlos Reservation. And I thank you for asking me to do this, Rachel, and everybody at StrongHearts. It's my honor to be here. So as always, I'd like to begin with smudge. I have some sacred tobacco and some sage here, prairie grass sage. So I'll go ahead and get it started in a good way. So first, I want to say, let us welcome our relatives who have joined us in the sacred circle, and we ask Creator to come into our heart space today. Let us show gratitude to our creators. We thank the Great Spirit for our breath of life, the sacred circle, and the lands we steward. Thank you, Tankashala, for our sunrise as we prepare for our day ahead. And we thank you for our sunset as Grandmother Moon takes over and our bodies wind down to rest. We thank you, Tankashala and Uchimaka, for our sacred medicines that you provide us. We use them in a good way in our offerings and prayers. We thank you for our standing nations, our plant relatives, and sacred grandfather rocks. We thank you, Creator, for the four-legged who teach us how to prepare for when seasons change and who nourish us and give us sustenance to live when they are called to do so. We thank you, Tankashila, for the winged ones who teach us about spirit and prayer and how to soar higher to be more connected to you. We thank you, Creator, for the finned ones, earth burrowers, the many-legged, the weed weavers, for they teach us how to stay closer and connected to you, Mother Earth, for they are a part of this beautiful medicine wheel and circle of life. We thank you for the two-legged who teach us love, patience, compassion, and understanding, for they are a reflection of self at times. We pray for our missing, murdered Indigenous relative and every child that matters. We pray to our ancestors as we hear them whisper in our hearts, guide us as we continue to walk the red road in a good way. Thank you for letting us remember the teachings of the universal law and principles you have written in all our hearts. Thank you for letting us remember the love that we have and we share gratitude. Let us remember our ancestors and relatives who watch over us from the unseen world. They come here today to do your work and to learn from one another. And we remember the prayers of our ancestors. We come here to pray for the 7 generations behind us, the 7 generations to come. We thank you for the knowledge and wisdom to carry forth the 7 sacred teachings of humility, love, courage, wisdom, integrity, truth, and respect. Creator, we thank you for all that you give us and all that you have given to us, for these are beautiful gifts. Thank you for allowing us to come to this beautiful circle today to honor our nations, relations, and tribes that you have given breath to. And Creator, we thank you again for allowing us to come here to be better humans, to live a harmonious and balanced way of life, and reminding us every day to show gratitude for the day of life. Pilamai, metako yeo yasan, chimegwech, asho ahi, anoko sunafui. Thank you for letting me do that prayer for us, Rachel. And pass the feather back to you. I hope.
Miigwech, Serena. I'll hand it over to Lorna and she can introduce herself and then she can pass it over to Rachel.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Rachel. My name is Lorna Cooney, and I am a co-founder and the executive director for Medicine Will Ride. I come from the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. I'm Ogallala Lakota Sioux, and we co-founded this organization in 2019, and thank you for having us. Go ahead, Rachel.
Alito Chimichokma. My name is Rachel Robison. I am a board member with Medicine Wheel Ride. I've been with the organization for a couple of years now. And I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in California and Alaska, and my specialty is working in Indigenous communities in both places. And as an avid motorcyclist, I joined Medicine Wheel Ride not only to support the amazing advocacy and social support work that they do, but also to give them support as a mental health professional who helps people that are helping people. So thank you for having me.
Awesome, thank you. And I apologize in advance if you can hear my lovely dogs downstairs barking. Hopefully you cannot, but before we get into our actual facilitated conversation where we talk about Medicine Wheel Ride and the advocacy that you all do as an organization, we're actually going to watch, well, hopefully we're going to watch a short film um, uh, called We Ride for Her, and it's a film really highlighting Medicine Wheel Ride and the work that you all do. So we're going to get into that. Bear with me as I make sure that I share appropriately and get the sound settings right. So I'm going to share, and then hopefully we can watch it all the way through. I just, if there are any technical glitches, we will be sure to share the link to the video. But I'm going to cross my fingers that it's going to work. So I'm going to share, go here and share sound. And we'll try it from here. Let's see.
Thank everyone to look directly into this lens. I'll count to 3. 1, 2, 3. All right. Look straight.
Hi, this is Lorna. Today we are flying my flag, which is the OL Nation flag, and then we have our sister flag. I'm sorry, baby. Then we have the Navajo flag that we have out for our sisters, and then we also have the MMIW flag that Lorinda will have on her bike as well. So I'm really thankful that my sisters have been able to come out here and ride in this parade with us. Thank you, and talk to you in a bit. Thanks.
I didn't really have a whole lot of knowledge about biker culture or biker community. I was just a housewife and a mom, you know.
I remember standing in the middle of a field calling the Rapid City Police Department, asking them to please call me back. I want to report my sister Susan missing. But I didn't get a call back. We didn't know where to start.
They really didn't know where Susan went missing. Did she go missing here in Rapid City? That was the last place she was seen. Or did she go missing down on the reservation?
I feel that the loss of her is just unbearable sometimes. Not know what happened or where she's at.
But you don't want to save this, do you?
Yes, I want to eat
It's
it
been
later.
sitting out all night.
I'm going to eat it later.
You guys okay? I'm gonna go help.
The Medicine Wheel Ride started back in 2019. I had never really met these women besides talking to them on the phone.
This is like the first ride. So this is Shelly, me, Levy, Lynette, and Lisa.
We started talking. Women were sharing stories about domestic violence and how it affected them. One of the riders, her daughter was murdered. It was just like, one after another, sharing stories and saying, well, what can we do? How can we make an impact on this epidemic, of MMIW? We'll just go around and have everybody speak up where they're coming in from for the ride and what your travel plans are.
I'm Nancy. I'm coming in from Florida. We left Florida yesterday.
I flew in the other night from Maui.
I'll be coming in from Riverton, Wyoming.
Yay.
Right.
Here I am. Hi, I'll be riding in from the west with the best.
Good to see you, ladies.
I do this ride not only to be a voice for our missing and murdered Indigenous people, but also to make an impact at a large event. We're trying to get the message out to as many people as we can. Sturgis is the largest motorcycle rally in the United States. I grew up here knowing about Sturgis, but as an Indigenous person, we just didn't really participate in it. It's a predominantly non-Indigenous gathering for males, so it's very powerful when you see Indigenous women leading a ride through Sturgis. I feel like it's a reclaiming of our land and saying, hey, we're here. We deserve to take up space here. So to have this year's logo on it instead. And also to make people aware of the issues that we have here. We know that MMIW is an issue. And what better way than to take it to Sturgis, because people from all over the United States that come here, I know that they have never heard of MMIW. I know that sex trafficking is a big deal because of how much people that it brings into South Dakota.
It's sort of my favorite thing to get out in the morning and walk and have coffee. I feel like that's peaceful. Only her wants to hold my hand, nobody else. Sadie is my niece, and ever since her mother disappeared, I've helped care for her. When we talk about mom and the things mom used to do, it's hard because I feel that when I cry, she cries.
When my mom asked me to start looking for her, that's when it really hit me. I'm like, oh my God, she really is missing. It's hard to describe, when you're looking for a missing relative. I was angry and I was feeling so sad, and I was just like, Susan, come back. I don't know where you're at, but please, this is too much. I would listen to I don't know why it was this specific song, but it's a song by Aretha Franklin. It's just something that was very comforting at the time as I was walking along looking for her.
Daydreaming and I'm thinking of you. Daydreaming and I'm thinking of you. Daydreaming.
When I first met Heather, she was passing out flyers for a young woman who had been missing for maybe about 2 weeks, and her name was Susan Chief Eagle. And I asked her, what can I do to help? So we set up a meeting with her to sit down with the chief of police. And then I also talked with the chief of police down on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, and they were able to talk to each other. That's one of the big barriers, you know, whenever somebody goes missing, is that you have the tribal police and then you have the police here in Rapid City, and they don't really converse too much.
I think it was in like August or maybe October, but the video footage that they had was at the beginning of May. Any leads that they could have used to help search for her had passed. On March 18th, they decided to close her case. They withdrew because they exhausted everything that they possibly could in terms of witnesses. And they had also suggested that at some point I declare her legally deceased. I wasn't ready for that at all. He told that, but there was no closure, essentially. And that was really hard.
For us, it's really important that we try to help as many families with as much as we can. I put a lot of sweat and tears even into getting this ride going every year, because sometimes it's tougher than other years.
I feel that a lot of our population are very at risk, and being female, you're very vulnerable to becoming part of a statistic of Native American women to have something happen to you.
Good kind blessing to you, comrade. Fighting the freedom for us and being able to honor MMIW. Thank you for thinking of my baby, my kidney.
It's my honor.
Shake my veteran's hand.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing it. This, she would have never otherwise got to make those kind of trips if she was alive. I'm glad she got to do it in the spirit world. Thank you very, very much.
That ache inside of your chest never goes away. Some days you think a little bit less of how painful it is, but the love you have for them never dissipates. I feel like Susan was somebody who loved us. When she loved you, you knew you were loved by her. And I hope that her story somehow reaches someone else in her shoes.
How are you? I'm so glad you came. Lovey, come here. Lynette, come here for a second.
I am Heather.
This is Heather. Or this is Susan's sister.
Oh.
This is Lisa. She's from Hawaii.
Oh, wonderful. I love Hawaii.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love.
I lost my sister in 2019, and all of you mean a lot to me. One person in particular sent me a patch from Hawaii, and she wrote it on a little note saying, when you ride, think of your little sister and wear this patch in honor of your sister. And I kept thinking, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna pay her back? How am I gonna, show her the love and the support that she's given me? So I'm gonna gift my skirt that I wore today to my sister, Lisa. I love you, sister. Thank you for your prayers. I love you. And she's adopted. She's Navajo now. There you go.
We believe in a cause, and that's what our patch on the back of our jacket represents. We represent sisterhood. And we support each other. It's not just the medicinal ride, it's just in daily life. If something good happens to me, I'm the first person I'm telling her, my sisters. Well, I guess my husband first, but they're the second people. The medicine will ride is medicine for us, for the families that we are able to help. I do it to protect my daughter. I do it to protect my community. I think that it's important that we continue to be active ourselves for violence against women, for the trafficking of Indigenous people, because it's all connected. MMIW, sex trafficking, violence. This is why we're here, and this is why the medicine will ride is important.
All right. I'm so glad that that played all the way through and we didn't have any technical glitches. And I'm also glad that I stopped sharing my camera because I had to gather myself a couple times. It was a very beautiful film. Um, so now we're going to get into some of our questions and hear directly from you guys. So I'll just open this up to both of you, and if you want to both take a turn answering or decide which one wants to answer, that's fine too. So can you share how Medicine Wheel Ride organization was founded and what inspired its creation, and tell us a little bit about your core mission and who you serve in Native communities?
Well, Medicine Will Ride began really through conversation, with women, and we were really brought together because of our love of motorcycles. And I think, in that, I think a lot of our women were sharing their experiences, personal life experiences, and a lot of that came from, some came to riding because they were survivors of a domestic violence. They've gone through grief or loss or some sort of trauma, and others, they've lost loved ones. And I think at the time when we came together, May 5th was coming up, and we were all talking about, how can we make an impact in our communities, because I think all of us have been impacted in some way. And one of them, I think one of the women had brought up, about doing a ride, and I think other women had mentioned that they wanted to do rides in their community. So it was just kind of a collective, of how we can, um, I guess, bring together our community and do something, that was meaningful for us, and that, we can do through our love of motorcycles and bringing purpose to that. So that's really how that conversation started, because I think a lot of our women, they also found a healing, with their, with motorcycles, because there's that freedom that you get and the strength, um, you know, with being out there on a motorcycle. So it really was, a community, collective effort to create Medicine Will Ride. So yeah. And I guess what was the next question?
Yeah, sorry. Your core mission and who you serve in Native communities.
Our core mission, is just to bring visibility to, MMIP, and um, awareness, and to also connect community together. I think has always been something that's been at the core of what we do, because we do, travel, across the United States. And by doing that, it is bringing together community.
Absolutely. So I'm going to shift to MMIR, or Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Advocacy and Action. So in what ways does Medicine Wheel Ride address MMIR in Native communities?
Again, I think it's just bringing back that community effort. We approach, MMIR through like advocacy, education, direct community support. We do our awareness rides. We also do educational presentations, community events. And the big part of what we do is building partnerships, because I think, by going through these different communities, I think last year we traveled through 6 different communities. And, along that way, it's just building partnerships, because, really it's a lot of the grassroots organizations that are kind of fueling this movement, and addressing this crisis of MMIR. Um, so it's just building those community partnerships and working together, because we've had, cases, that, where we had to reach out to those partners that we had met along the route and work together to, get survivors to safe spaces. So those partnerships are really powerful when we work together.
Maybe Lorna, you could say a little bit about some of the work that you do in your home community as well. So, you're doing a great job of kind of illustrating how we work state to state, community to community. But then in addition to that, you're also on the ground every day facilitating these resources for victims.
Yeah, and I think each one of us are really involved in our own or our own local communities. I know that I worked a lot with local communities. Right now we're working on a healing room with where all women are honored. It's a women's shelter. And Medicine Will Ride is creating a healing space for the women that go through there. Sorry, I'm trying to lose my voice. And creating a space for them, to kind of reflect, a space just for the women. I know Rachel helped me put together a book list, which was really meaningful. I was looking through all these books and I was like, wow, these are, really great books to share. I know it's going to be like a meditation room for these women, to just sit and reflect and work towards healing. And I guess it's going to be called, the Medicine Will Ride Healing Room. So I'm really excited about that. We've worked with other local partners, with putting together events. And then like on, June 12th, we're working with the Red Ribbon Skirt Society and then also the Veterans Group. And we're doing a red dress event on not April 12th, but June 12th, sorry. But, it is, just getting out there. We're working with a family as well here locally who has been affected. Their loved one went missing about 2 years ago, and just, showing up for them, whether it's going to court with them, showing up for them, for the funeral. We've provided funeral escorts, just a lot of just showing up for families and letting them know, letting them know that they're not alone in all of this.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most profound impacts, obviously, for families that have experienced that. This crisis is just that, other people care, right? Other people want to, share awareness and visibility on these issues. So I think that is super super impactful and but still heavy work, right? This is all heavy work when we're trying to end violence in our communities. So, thank you to you both, and thank you to all of the riders in your organization. What are some memorable moments or impactful events from your past MMIR rides or campaigns? Kind of talked a little bit about it, but are there other memorable moments that you want to talk about or share?
Yeah, there's a lot of really memorable moments. I think, in thinking about that, what a really impactful moment for me was this past year, whenever we rode through the Umatilla Reservation, and we did an event there in Pendleton, Oregon. And, whenever we arrived into that community, we were just really welcomed into the community. And, they had a drum group there and we're singing. And I was standing by a young lady and, dancing with her. And, they were ringing the bell. And as part of their tradition. And then they were doing this thing with their heart where they were going inward and outward in certain parts of the song. And I didn't know what it meant, what that meant to them. And so after we were done, I asked the young lady and I'm like, what was that, with the in and out? And she said, you're bringing in all of the healing, good things into your heart and letting go of all the negativity, and so they do that in parts of the song. And to me, that was really powerful, And so in a way, I kind of feel like, um, we're there to support the families, but then in a way, they're also helping us as well. And I just thought that was a really powerful, beautiful moment. And she actually gave me, this medallion, because her mother was murdered, and so she was there. And so she told me the story of her mother. But, she also, in a way, helped me as well, with that, because again, this work is very heavy.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And it's a beautiful medallion. Go ahead, Rachel. I'm sorry.
And I'll share a story from last year as well. We were at Fort Belknap in Montana, and it was after our community event. And I was standing outside with a group of maybe 3 or 4 women, many of them related. So there was like mom and daughter and auntie. And we were talking about the ribbons on our bike. So as we ride, we have community members, if they want to write the name, any anniversary dates, something important on a red ribbon, that we tie it to our bikes, and we carry their spirit with us. We carry them with us, their memory and that. So I was getting ribbon for these women, and they were sharing their stories with me about, missing women specifically in their family, sister, daughter, mother. And I'm a therapist. I've been doing this work as a psychotherapist for over 16 years, and I've been primarily working in Indigenous communities for the last decade. So I'm listening and talking with them, and also kind of trying to I'm always thinking about prevention. And I always want to leave a client, a community, a conversation better off than when I found it, sort of thing. So I was listening for these common threads and trying to sort of elicit some insights from them while also staying present in that moment as they're thinking about their relatives. And the violence came up. So in all of these murdered women in their family, the through line was interpersonal violence. And there were granddaughters there that were like teens, so this little cluster of females. And so kind of talking about, well, how can we not pass on this legacy of interpersonal violence to our granddaughters? How can we keep better tracks on our female relatives and also hold our male relatives accountable for that? And it was a sad but beautiful moment, because they were talking about bodies being left. We were standing kind of near a river, and some of the bodies had been found near this river. It was kind of a notorious spot, and how the time between these different murders, decades, but all in the same family, and the through line violence, and then the women all saying that they had all been in romantic relationships where there were violence. So trying to use these hard moments, but moments of deep connection, also as opportunities to talk about, we can do something about this, that there is something that we can all do, and we can all do together. And that was a really powerful moment for me.
Well, thank you for sharing that as well. It kind of leads into our next question too. What are some of the biggest barriers you see in raising awareness and or combating the MMIR crisis?
Oh, I think there's a lot of things I think that are barriers. There's a lot of, jurisdictional area barriers, of course, system failures that happen, and data failures, because there's really not, a whole lot of current data out there, that keeps track of, the numbers of people that we have missing. And so I know that that's really needed. But mostly you just kind of see a lot of jurisdictional failures.
Yeah, I know the jurisdiction is always an issue, and the data is so it's really hard to capture, right? But I think, Rachel, when you mentioned, just hearing from that one family and hearing kind of the commonality between the generations, and how that intimate partner violence was one of those commonalities, I think is really important to understand in this movement or in this crisis. And knowing that our Native women experience, and Native families, Native men, Native children experience some of the highest rates of violence in our communities, does make a lot of sense when we talk about the missing and murdered Indigenous relatives crisis.
And my bias is mental health, so I'm going to see things through that lens. But the legacy of intergenerational trauma, the legacy of the boarding schools, and now we're seeing the great-grandchildren, the grandchildren of that, and how they parent, so these different generations of parenting, where the sort of the love, nurturing, tenderness was eradicated from Indigenous families, and then the introduction of substance use, which both impacts people, their behavior and treatment and abuse, and then it also impacts the next generation, because many people are imbibing alcohol because of their addiction, and so that child then has developmental disabilities because of it, The impulse control is one of those things that's really impacted even just by a little bit of drinking when you're pregnant. It can be. So the impulse control contributes to emotional dysregulation, contributes to intermittent, partner violence, contributes to a likelihood of using substance use as a coping mechanism, and then homicide and sexual assault, kind of come. So I feel like sociologically, we have culturally, in all of our communities, we have these hundreds of things working against us, that are contributing to this crisis. But there's stuff that we can all do about it. It's definitely, there's empowerment and healing and support and strength and resiliency that can happen. And as an organization, that is a piece that we also want to bring to it. And that sometimes working in Indian country, it can feel like we're all just a little sand on a beach. So it just feels overwhelming. The pain and the trauma just feels insurmountable. However, you hear these, one story can make a difference, and one connection can make a difference, and one relationship can make a difference. And even one hobby like learning how to ride motorcycles and planting that seed for someone who has post-traumatic stress disorder or who's a survivor of violence of some kind, planting that one seed of empowerment and confidence and safety by doing something really hard and being successful, like motorcycle riding. That seed of confidence and empowerment grows as a protective factor and can help, rewire the nervous system over time. And so the motorcycle part of it, although it may seem superficial from the outside, there's really good data to support that us trying to get other women and other survivors and other Indigenous people on the backs of bikes, it can actually help positively impact these legacy things like, chronic stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, and the impact of intergenerational trauma.
No, I really like that. And it again leads into my next question. So how do transportation, connection, and community movement play a role in your advocacy work?
Well, transportation and movement, I think they're central, to everything that we do because, it allows us to go into many different Native communities, into rural and sometimes isolated areas, and our motorcycles really allow us, to show up for the communities and create visibility, build relationships again, so again, I think that that's really powerful that we are able to cover, thousands of miles, and connect with these communities.
Thank you. I lost my questions. Here they are. So, what strategies have you found most effective in engaging both Native and non-Native communities?
I think overall, it's kind of been like, storytelling has been a really big, powerful tool for us, when people, I think when they hear directly from like families, survivors, and advocates, the issue becomes more human instead of just like statistics. So, we really focus on creating, welcoming and educational spaces where people, can ask questions, learn respectfully, and understand the broader impact of violence in our Native communities.
I think I agree with everything that Lorna said, and just a small sort of story that I think in a lot of non-Native areas and communities, people don't know what's happening, and they don't. The sort of the "we're still here" thing, I think, can go a long ways. I sat on next to a woman on a plane on my way to Albuquerque a couple weeks ago, and she was from Los Angeles. I live in California. And when I kind of told her about Medicine Wheel Ride and what we do and why we were going to Albuquerque and all that, she's like, I had no idea, she's like, they should make a movie about what you guys do. And they should. I'm like, well, yeah. That I think that because Indigenous issues aren't primary cultural issues, that a lot of people just have no idea. And I'm not saying that they don't have some responsibility in that, but it just doesn't get the attention that it should. So I think for us, the motorcycles and the images and our connections and our media stuff, like letting people know, like, we're still here and we're having issues and we need your support. We need you to recognize this is really important and effective too.
It is. And I think like even just like, in some of the writing that we do, just stopping at a gas station, brings people to us and they're like, what is, who are you? What are you doing? And so it starts that conversation. It's kind of like, I had no idea this was happening. And so it's just making those connections, along the route that are really powerful as well.
Absolutely. Um, can you share a story of how your work has impacted an individual, family, or tribe related to MMIR?
I'm always, I kind of go back to this, to this stories because, it was when we first started, I think that we really didn't have a plan for Medicine Will Ride. It's just that we just wanted to help our communities. And this ride, we had some of our riders who were coming up from Phoenix, and along the route, a family had reached out and they said, we'd really like for you to meet with you all. And so they stood beside the road, and our riders came through and met them on the side of the road, and they told us, about their missing daughter and mother. She was a mother of, 3 young boys, and she had been missing, I think, for like 2 years at that point, and just sharing, her story and just saying, we've been trying to, bring more awareness to her case. We're really not getting attention. And so from that point on, Medicine Will Ride kind of took on her story. We connected her, with a lawyer who advocated for them. She eventually was found, and her murderer was, prosecuted, and that has kind of stayed with us from start to finish. Our organization and other organizations showed up for the trial, so that was really powerful. Um, to finally see that family get justice for their loved ones, or for their daughter. And you know yeah, so that's one of the stories I think that we do share, because it was one of the very first ones, because again, a lot of our women, have, they're not, you know advocates, or they weren't advocates. They were just kind of coming together because of their shared love for motorcycles. So I really, they really stepped up for this family. Did you have any stories, Rachel? Or
I was thinking I was going to ask you to share a story about the outcome wasn't 100% great, but the person, the male who was in Arizona, who was in one of those false those money schemes. He was in like a boarding care, and then you guys were able to get him to at least make a connection with his family before he ended up passing away. But there was some, like it was a way for them to be able to connect with him. How you guys did that?
yeah, and so that's, when I was talking about kind of like building those partnerships, this young man was from the Blackfeet Nation from Montana. And I think so the mother reached out and it was just like, my son went to this treatment facility down in Arizona, and I haven't heard from him. I think it was for months. She was really worried about him because she hadn't heard from him. And so through some of those partnerships, we reached out to some organizations that we worked with in Montana. We had writers who were on the ground in Phoenix. We worked together to get, I think, the mother and auntie and an advocate that was there with them, down to Arizona to search for him, because they had no clue where he was at. So they went to the treatment facility that he was supposed to be in. It was in a strip mall, and there was nobody there. They went to the back of the building and it was covered with chicken wire, and so they had no clue where their son was at. And so in their search efforts, they ended up finding him, and he was in a halfway house, I guess you can say. It really wasn't a legitimate treatment facility, and that scheme, they were using it and collecting money from the state and keeping these individuals there under the influence, just so they can collect that monthly, check for them. And they were able to locate their son, tried to get him into a legitimate treatment center. And he ended up wanting to stay there, and he did stay. And, I know the mother really wanted him to come home, but he didn't. And unfortunately, he did lose his life while he was down in Phoenix. But, I think it was really hard, and the mother did come out to our event when we went through the Blackfeet Nation in Browning last year. She came out to our event, and it was good to see her and, just be there for her. Because I know, of course it's, difficult for every, for family to go through something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for sharing both of those stories. They both, different outcomes, sure, but are just difficult outcomes, but still important to share and highlight and, spread that awareness about these experiences. So thank you for
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask about partnerships. Um, can you can you talk a little bit about how this collaboration kind of was started between Medicine Wheel Ride and StrongHearts?
Well, I guess really, I think it was really started because I feel like, we're kind of just have shared values, together, and a shared commitment to really helping our Indigenous communities that have been affected by violence, trauma, and loss. So I think both of our organizations understand the importance of culturally grounded advocacy and creating spaces where our Indigenous people feel supported and connected.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Let's see. Have you, so how have guest rides and maybe community chats or other community awareness events similar to this, how have those helped those experiencing loss or those who are maybe searching for their missing loved ones?
I think, you know, these spaces really create connection and healing uh, because often I feel like, our people carry grief and trauma in isolation, and I think, through our events, we're able to create a space for community conversations that allow people to share their stories and find support. I also I think that they also help us, educate a broader audience, um, so that families, don't really have to feel like they're carrying this alone. Um, so, and I know it's really difficult, for families to share. And I think one of the biggest things, and maybe you can kind of talk a little bit, Rachel, about, um, like we want to create those spaces for families, but we also don't want to, traumatize or kind of that trauma informed care. Rachel, can you kind of speak about that or?
Yeah, well, we want to make sure that that people aren't re-traumatizing themselves or disclosing things that they're not ready to disclose. So we try to make sure that our events are not marketed as therapy, right? That we want to bring awareness and we want people to share their story. If someone is very dysregulated, we always provide them support and resources. And we always leave communities with materials we're trying to link them with local mental health supports, or we always leave them the StrongHearts, helpline. We have that on our cards. Um, so validating their stories, giving them an opportunity to share, but also encouraging them to go towards more robust sort of healing places.
Sure.
And it's hard for people. Like we've tried offering like online, group talking circles, and we've tried to link them to therapists, and there's a lot of discomfort in that or reluctance. I think that's something that I wish that we could do better, that we as communities could do better. We could really encourage our relatives and our community members to get, more robust healing support, whether it's from a cultural provider or from, more Western style, but whatever they feel comfortable with. And we want our events we want to be good role models, and we want them to be empowering too. We don't, because that's kind of where the prevention comes from. If you are sober and empowered and have a good self-esteem, the risk of you ending up in a violent relationship or substance use or being trafficked or being murdered are hugely reduced, right? And so we want to be good role models. We want to show the women in the community and the men that that we are strong Indigenous women, and we have many different skin colors. We come from many different communities, many different states, and that somebody can find someone that they can relate to among us because we're a very diverse group. And we also want to show the men in our communities, because even though I think that the rates in terms of victims, 75% of victims are women, 13 to 15% are men, but some of that has to do with the dual reporting states for interpersonal violence, that there's 24 states where if there's a issue of violence in a romantic relationship that they're both arrested, but 95% of the perpetrators are still men. Right? So we want to show men that in our communities that women should be taking up space, and that women are strong, and that women are empowered, and that we deserve, a seat at the table and to be treated with respect. And so I think our community events, we try to have some of all of this, because that empowerment and strength and groundedness is a part of healing for our victims. Right? So we try to sort of provide events that address all of these things.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you. There are some questions that our guests or our participants have asked, so I'm gonna shift over to those so that they have time to hear. First one is, your organization is very young. How many community rides have you done since the beginning?
We are in our 7th year of doing our ride at Sturgis. So this year will be our 7th year. We've done 2 rides in San Diego. We just did 1 ride over in Arizona. So it was Medicine Wheel Ride Arizona. So just last weekend was our very first ride there. And I think that, we've gone out and participated and partnered with other organizations who are doing rides as well in their communities. But really, we just have the one big ride that we do at Sturgis for sure every year. So it kind of depends,
Yeah.
And we're hoping to add more. Yeah, we're hoping to add more in the next coming year. We've talked about it expanding, into other areas as well.
Well, that's the perfect segue to our next question, because it does say, if someone wanted to have your organization ride through their community, how would they connect with you? What is the process?
So they can email us, at info@medicinewillride.org, and let us know that they're interested in doing a community event there.
Awesome. And we have the website linked in our chat, and we'll also include it in our follow-up email with the recording embedded, but also information about how to contact Medicine Wheel Ride. And so someone did also ask, does your organization return to Sturgis every year? I feel like that would create a lot of awareness.
We do. I think we actually have one of the largest rides now at Sturgis, and and it has really grown over the years. I mean, I think the first year we were slinging registration and t-shirts out the back of my pickup truck, and, it was very grassroots. You wouldn't have known, the disorganization happening, but it's just kind of very organic, the way that it was created. Our very first year ride. So Sturgis wasn't our very first year ride. In 2019, we did a big ride across the United States in the shape of a medicine wheel. And I think altogether there was maybe like 10 of us that did that ride, each coming in from different directions. And we had 2 Canadian riders reach out and said, we really want to help. What can we do? And they rode the entire outer rim of Turtle Island, which was like 13,000 miles.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we all met in Topeka, Kansas. They were having like the Women's Freedom Ride during that same time. And we came from the 4 directions carrying names from our communities of, our missing and murdered loved ones from our local communities. And that was just, that was powerful in itself. I think there was just me and Lynette Red Cloud who rode out of here in Rapid City and came in from the north. And yeah, and we, met there after just starting this organization and meeting maybe like 2 months prior to that.
Holy, that's amazing.
And then last
Yeah.
year at the Ride in Sturgis, there was over 250 registered riders. So just to give you a
Wow.
sense of how it's grown.
Absolutely. Well, and there is another question related to that. How does one become a rider with Medicine Wheel Ride?
Organically, we don't really have, we don't like to say that, we're not like a motorcycle club. We're not, a membership club. We are just riders who believe in a cause. And so if somebody wants to, ride with us, we just ask that they show up. We have our event there at Sturgis, and you can reach out and let us know that you're interested, and we'll get back to you and figure out how we can bring you in.
Yeah, so Medicine Wheel Ride is a 501c3. We're a nonprofit organization. We only have one employee, and that's Lorna. We're all volunteers. A lot of us pay for all of our own expenses to travel and to do these rides. Medicine Wheel Ride is not sponsoring all of this stuff. So as a rider, if you want to join, how I joined was I reached out, I offered some support. I met them in person at a few different events, so that's another way. We have a newsletter in our website. We have an upcoming events page, and it kind of says if we're going to be participating in a ride or going to a powwow or some event where we'll be. But you let us know and come up and join us. And if you ride a motorcycle, you join us at one of our events, and sort of in that process, like she said, organically, you kind of become a writer, with our group in that way, but we're not an MC for sure.
Thank you. And then I think our last question that I see is, have you been to Alaska, and is there anything planned?
There has been talk of it.
So I work with Copper River Native Association. I've been working with that IHS clinic since 2022 as a psychotherapist. And I go to Alaska a few times a year, but that's primarily the communities that I'm serving are in the interior of Alaska. It's like an hour and a half north of Valdez. So I've been hitting them up, we would like to do, we are connected with communities in Alaska. We haven't been there in person, but we've they kind of know who we are. Our biggest issue with it is that the Alaska motorcycle riding season is very short, and it overlaps and conflicts with the Sturgis ride that we do. And Sturgis is our biggest fundraiser of the year. So that's the money that we use to help all the families with resources that we do throughout the year. So because the Alaska riding season is so short, and it kind of is during July and August basically are the best times to ride bikes over there, and our fundraisers at the beginning of August. We haven't been able to coordinate that yet, but hopefully someday we will.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask one final question, and then we're going to open up our closing poll. But looking ahead, what are Medicine Wheel Ride's plans for the coming year? And how can StrongHearts and other organizations or allies support you all?
This coming year, we just plan, to continue expanding our awareness rides. I really would like to work on that and doing, more educational presentations, in communities, and really broadening our community engagement events, I think is really something we want to work towards. I know that we've also looked at trying to start a youth group within our organization. Last year, yeah, we had 3 youth who led our ride across country. They rode with other riders and rode in the front, and just hearing their insight. I mean, I know that one of the mothers was sharing with me, and she said her son wants to plan his entire, like, he doesn't want to go on a vacation or he doesn't want to go anywhere this year. He just wants to go on the Medicine Wheel ride again this coming year. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so we want to really, try to incorporate that somehow. So um, that's what we'll be working towards. And then also our Sturgis motorcycle ride, which is on August 9th, this year at the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. It's the first Sunday of the rally. We would really like to encourage people to come out and ride with us. And if they don't ride, come out and join with us, because you don't have to ride, to show up for our events. You can just come up. We start at Bear Butte in the morning with prayer, and then we end in Outlaw Square, which is a very large area, I think, where we can, we get a lot of visibility in that area. To that event. So I mean, I just encourage people to come out, and join us. And as far as partners, yes, we are always welcoming partners. We want to, invite any organization that would like to come out and either, participate somehow. We'd love to have that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll definitely be following along. I know our StrongHearts social media accounts will be promoting that ride and other rides that you all do. And I just want to thank you both so much for chatting with us today. And we got to learn a lot about your organization and how you promote awareness. And I really like the supporting the families, right? It's one thing to do the awareness about it, but to support the families that are more closely impacted by MMIR. I think is probably the most profound thing that I've learned today. So just genuine chi miigwech thank you in Ojibwe. And yeah, I think we've got the rest of the questions answered. And if anyone is able to fill out our closing poll, we greatly appreciate it.
Can I add one more thing?
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
That I should have added, is that this year we are starting our ride in LA. So if anybody wants to come out and join that event, it's going to be on August 1st at a place called the Bike Shed in LA. And so that's where we will do kind of our kickoff event on that day and start making our way towards Sturgis.
Yeah, could you tell them the route so that people that are maybe joining from areas near kind of the route?
Right now it's tentative. We're still working out the route, but we'll probably, be traveling through like St. George, kind of keeping close to like the interstate, and then coming through Denver and then through Pine Ridge, the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. Because, even though we're right here, we've never ridden through my own community. So
oh wow.
So I'm really glad that we're going to be able to come through my community, and then, the next day, come back here to Sturgis. So we usually start out about a week before the rally starts.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's good information to share. And how many miles is that? I'm just curious. Or
I
thereabouts.
think it's about 1,600 miles, maybe a little more, a little less, somewhere in there. It's one of the shorter routes. I think last year was a little bit more than that, and the year before that was like a little bit over 2,000 miles. So every year it just kind of depends, and that's not taking into account the riders that ride out to these locations to, start at our starting point.
We had a rider in 2024 that rode down from the Blackfeet Nation in Canada all the way down to Central California to join our ride, and then ride all the way back up the 2,200 miles to Sturgis.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
that
I think
is
one of our
impressive.
riders, we tracked some of her miles last year, because she made a trip to Canada. But I think she tracked like 17,000 miles that she did last year.
Holy, that is so cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Amazing work that you and your writers all do. So thank you so much again for sharing information about it, and we'll be following along.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, Koki.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining today. Miigwech.